Handsome face.
Ooze.
Call the work session of the Isabella County Board of Commissioners to order. Stand for the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Present. Commissioner Engler,
Here.
Here.
Blaney, Commissioner Hutchinson, Commissioner Embry, Commissioner Hope. All present, Mr. Chairman.
Up next will be approval of the agenda. We'll start the meeting with general public comments. And we don't have any presentations or special reports. One appointment to the Mid-State Health Network Substance Use Disorder Oversight Policy Board. And then committee reports, Finance and Administration Committee.
Administration Committee is all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee is all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And Human Resources and Public Works Committee.
Human Resources and Public Works Committee is all set, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have no intergovernmental affairs, no administrator controller issues, no unfinished business. Under new business, we will accept, place on file the county administrator controller performance appraisal. And then we have item B is consider authorizing participation in the Michigan State Subdivision Agreement for allocation of Kroger Settlement Agreement. And then general public comment again, announcements and then adjournment. So with that, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Marino.
Support Hutchinson.
Been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Very good. And then next is general public comments. Is there anyone for general public comments? Being no one for general public comment, we'll move on to appointments to boards and commissions. So this evening we'll consider reappointing Jim Marino to the Mid-State Health Network Substance Use Disorder Oversight Policy Board for a 3-year term ending August 31st, 2027, or until a successor is appointed. Is there anyone like on that particular item?
I would really be glad to still be on it.
Great.
It's a great organization, I'd say. Wouldn't you, Jerry?
Yep. I know Commissioner Jalzinski was on it for a number of years. And Jim Marino is now our representative on that committee. Okay. So next is committee reports, Finance and Administration Committee. Gentlemen.
First item for the Finance and Administration Committee is to consider placing on file the June 14th, 2024 invoice list in the amount of $324,119.57. June 21st, 2024 invoice list in the amount of $404,917.82. June 28th, 2024 invoice list in the amount of $206,760.71. The July 5th, 2024 invoice list in the amount of $2,387,733.68, as well as our adjustment list dated July 11th, 2024. Now, customarily, our elaborate on the fact that these go through many. So we're going to begin with our June 14th, and we'll go through each one. Any of the commissioners have any questions that we can pose to Madam Administrator? People do that then. But let's start with the June 14th. The total is $324,119. Many of these are normal and customary for our normal operations of the county. You do notice that we have several here for our drains. We are working on our drains very diligently and have been for quite a few months now, especially even back during the winter when we had such a mild winter. Our drain commissioner has really been putting in a lot of time and a lot of effort out there, at least I know in my district. We have our usual integrated architecture bill for the April services. The others. Ooh, I do see game time here for the 12,000. I know that was part of a grant for the new equipment and structures out at Herrick Park. I know I had a really nice time out there. I decided not to go down the slide. Thought better of it. But it was a beautiful park, and they've done a lot of really nice things. So thank you, Director Hanson, for that. Gentlemen, any questions or concerns regarding invoices for June 14th? Hearing none, we'll move on to the June 21st invoice list. Here, that total is $404,917. We have our usual things: the monthly medical examiner for our Sparrow, equalization contract, again, more drain cleaning, drain work. Then we have our Zybec. I know it's a large number, but please understand for the sheriff, we know these are going to be critical for our new program. They are adjustable and they are specifically designed to meet the specific needs of that correctional facility. So he did work very hard to get these, the price of this worked out, and I think he's done a really good job of it. Then we have our McBride Quality Care for a monthly day treatment for children in trial court. Any other questions on this, gentleman, or anything you'd like to cover? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. It's June 28th, invoice list, a lot of drain, animal control, public defender, and then we have our solar plan review for the upcoming solar farms that are going to be in Isabella Township. Total of that invoice list was $206,760. Commissioners, any questions with this set? Okay, hearing none. We'll move on to the July 5th invoice list. This one is on the larger side, $2,387,733. $2 million of that is our June construction charge for Clark Construction. Again, we have some more expenses involved with the solar plan review. And again, a lot of very customary and usual bills that come in order to operate the county. Questions? Vice Chairman?
Not so much a question, just want to point out the WellPath LLC, the $48,260.83. It's the monthly medical services contract for the sheriff. A lot of people don't realize that once we take somebody into the custody of the sheriff's department and put them in a correctional facility, we automatically assume the medical care for that person. And if you take a look at a 12-month cost, we're closing on $600,000, which means about probably 2.5 cents of every dollar we spend, every tax dollar we spend goes for that. So we're involved in a lot of different things that people don't understand. But I just thought this is one that I wanted to point out that, we spend a lot to maintain the well-being of the people that we have in our custody.
Part of that too is that when people are incarcerated, they lose their Medicaid. And a lot of them are on Medicaid. And so then we are responsible for their care. There's efforts at the state level to remedy that. I don't know how successful that's going to be or how long it's going to take.
Well, I do know something from the, policy summit. The state has three, parts of it done. They need to get six. But, when it's all filled out and sent to Washington, it's gonna take 12 months before they'll come back.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be, if the waiver gets into effect, then, people will be getting their Medicaid back, I think 90 days before they get out.
Yes, I.
Because a lot of times, if people get out and they have nothing, they just end up back in.
Mm-hmm.
The only other thing I would mention is the sheriff is aware of these high costs and anticipates those costs are going to continue to rise steeply, as we all see, and in terms of healthcare costs for families and individuals have continued to go up. So I think he's looking for new and innovative ways to provide that medical care to the people that we're responsible to have in our custody. So it's something we have to deal with.
Is there any other questions, comments on those? We'll move to the adjustment list dated July 11. And again,
Did you go through your July 5th list?
oh,
No, okay. June 28th? We should have 4 this time because of missing the
one of them.
first June meeting. June 1st, June 14th? Yeah, we've been
I
through
think it
4?
was the June 28th.
So
I don't think we got to the hats. It was on June 28th.
Yeah.
I covered that
mentioned hats.
one.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, we good, clerk?
I think we're good on them. At least I hope. That was my understanding. Let's see. So again, we're back to the adjustment list. With the adjustment list, I really appreciate the folks COA, the sheriff's office, central dispatch. They're working hard to avoid additional costs to the county by paying for the invoices early to receive a discount or to avoid a late fee. Because of the timing of how we pay our bills, we have this process where they can get them paid in advance of when they would normally get paid based on our rotation of when bills do get paid. So again, I appreciate all of them doing this. As you can see, there are quite a few on this list. Even, like I said, the administration pays their bills, trying to pay them early to avoid late fees. But again, thank you to the sheriff. Thank you to the director of the COA for getting out ahead of all these costs so that we don't have any additional costs to the county. Commissioners, any questions or concerns regarding our adjustment list? Hearing none, we will move that on to the next regular board meeting. Thank you.
Business is consider approving the prime contract change order number 22 with Clark Construction in the net additional amount of $39,949 and authorize the board chairperson to sign the same. Do we have Heidi with us?
Yep, I'm here.
Heidi.
Hi, Gary. Hi, everybody. PCCO number 22. Right now we are currently a buyout of 30,121 remaining. We have a contingency that we have not touched at this time. So we have a total remaining of $811,895. Construction is about 79% complete. And percentage wise, where we're at with contingency and buyout is 37%. The total of this PCCO number 22 is $39,949. The first item is PCO number 135. In a couple of the dorm rooms where the inmates are going to be housed long term, we have some exposed ductwork. This ductwork, due to the inmates being in there and for security, we need to enclose that with a soffit type of system so they cannot access that and get in there, hide anything, or kind of mess with the ductwork. So adding that in for your C110 and C157 dorms is a total add of $28,814. And that is coming from buyout. The next item on this list was for an owner request, the cleanups behind the steel cells. We were asked to provide like a hook on there so that if anything gets flushed down, like socks, sheets, t-shirts, any of that kind of stuff, the maintenance crew can go back there easily and pull those items with that hook instead of trying to fish down in there and to try to get those items out. That's a much needed maintenance item, and that cost was $11,135. And that item also comes out of buyout. So a total of this one is $39,949. So any questions?
So these change orders, they come up every once in a while. Some are to the favor of the project where we can subtract some of the cost. And at other times they add to the cost. One thing I can say is the process. I go to the meetings on Thursday with the contractors and owners and Clark Construction. And I know when these things come up, they are given a lot of attention by the sheriff, by our facilities director, Steve Schumacher, by Clark Construction, Department of Corrections weigh in. We have the planning people from Union Township that weigh in. So there's a lot of review before a change order comes out that we know we're going to have to move ahead with. And I think we still have a little bit of left in our buyout before we have about a $700,000 contingency, which we haven't touched yet. So the project is about 80%, 79, 80% complete. And
Correct.
I think we're doing well to keep the project on budget, and maybe hopefully we can bring it in under budget. So I do thank Clark Construction and all the people that have the input as this project moves to completion. Yes.
You want to point out the efforts of Director Shoemaker with our facilities department. While it is an $11,000 cost, that $11,000 will save us thousands and thousands of dollars in potential plumbing. Legacy costs down the road. So again, thank you, Director Shoemaker. Thank
So
you.
this really came about. I mean, you have your normal wear and tear that we'll have to have things fixed as we go along over the years. But when you have people that have time on their hands and all they can do is maybe put their sheets and blankets down the sewer system, it won't plug the system. Now it goes into a device that has a hook that will capture it, make it an easy clean out. And you got to believe that $11,000 is a very inexpensive solution to something that would be a whole lot more costly if we didn't address that in some kind of manner. Are there any other questions or concerns? We'll move this on then to tonight's meeting.
Next item, to consider approving the consent to enter private property form for parcel ID number 17-00-00-190-00. Madam Administrator, would you mind taking the lead on this?
I would not mind at all, sir. So that parcel ID you just noted is maybe better known as the west parking lot across Main Street from our county administration building downtown. And you might remember that EPA was here the last couple of years sometime to do some testing. regarding some known leaking underground storage tanks and testing that plume to see which way it's moving because of the closeness, proximity of the river to that. EPA came, they did their testing, they went away. We really didn't hear anything until now Eagle has come to say, hey, we've got this triage program at the state. And really their goal is to try and close this site out, right? They want to come back to do further testing and their goal is to close it. So as we had talked in finance, some of the language in here talks about gasoline. When I talked to Eagle, they said it could be gasoline, fuel oil, any type of petroleum type of, I guess, product that is there. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there'll be excavation or remediation. The testing might just get to put this to bed. And apparently EPA didn't have aggressive enough testing. They couldn't go deep enough, which is interesting that our state has maybe better equipment and can. So that's the gist of the request for access. Correct. Even if they were to find something that needed to be remediated, we learned that from EPA. The originator of the contamination is no longer a valid entity. The liability is basically on the federal government now. Thank you, sir.
When I was Parks and Recreation Director for the county, I used to be housed in a building in that location. So I think if there was a gas station there, that would have predated the building I was in, which eventually was ripped down and we have a parking lot now. But if they do find some kind of a petroleum product, whether it's leaking oil or gasoline, it could be that the tanks are still underground. And I would think to do a mediation of that, they would have to remove those tanks. But if they find that they have to remove them, they would assume the cost of that removal and no cost to the county?
That is my understanding, yes. Mhm. Yes. Mhm. The only way to get these places cleaned up, right? Yep.
Next item. Consider approving the 2024 artist and venue hosting agreement and the amendments and supplemental conditions to the agreement for the installation of artwork involved in Art Walk Central 2024 and authorize the board chair to sign the same. So this is an event that's held annually and hosting a number of venues host these art displays, except that this year, a lot of those displays would be in the central part of, I'm trying to think what they call it. It was a venue for the city for parking and also for some outdoor activities.
Town center.
Town center. And now that's undergoing a major renovation and renewal. So that is a construction site. And so they look, the Artwork Central has lost that venue. So they asked the county if we'd be willing to take on display of one of the items. We'd have checked with county council and we do have coverage, liability coverage. And so there's not a whole lot of risk. And I think just being a good partner with a nonprofit organization and the city and downtown, this is something I think we need to do. Questions, comments?
Would you like to see the art piece? I know we showed it in finance. I can share it on my screen.
Sure.
And I apologize. I'm not really oh, I think I can share it. Hang on. Get to Zoom. It's so we all know the love artwork. This is like artwork. So that's the artwork that will be displayed southwest corner of the county administration during Artwork Central. Thank you.
The discussion, we'll move this on then to tonight's meeting for consideration.
Item 5. Now, we have our efforts to bring solar to Isabella County. We have some options here. We have one grant, 100,000, one that's 500,000, and another that's 750,000. So, Madam Administrator, I'm going to turn the explanation of these opportunities over to you.
Sure. Well, let me first start by bursting your bubble just a little bit, because the $750,000 one, we're only eligible for half of that. So, but we'll start there, and Director Nieport, please come up and help me if I go astray. Our representatives, Jason and Emily from DTE. If I go astray, you please help me, because without DTE, I'm not sure, you know, how we would have known about these in a timely fashion. So thank you very much for forwarding links even to the Eagle pages of where to find the grant information. So thank you, Josh at DTE as well. So we'll start with the big one. This is the Renewable Ready Communities Award from Eagle. And this is $5,000 per megawatt, right? So help me, Tim. Half of that is for the host community, where the solar panels are. Half of that is for the permitting agency, which is the county, right? So do the math on 150 megawatts, it's 375,000 to the county and 375 to Isabella Township if they successfully apply for the awards.
Both those applications, I understand, are in. Ours was submitted this morning. I finished ours up this morning and submitted it. I believe Isabella Township, with the assistance of Middle-Michigan Development Corporation, submitted theirs on Friday of last week. So they're both in. They're community awards. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't receive these, pending, funding. I do believe they have quite a bit of funding there, though, and I think we're one of the earlier applicants of this Readiness Award. So I do believe that'll be forthcoming.
And these aren't dollars that we can use to cover a budget deficit, right? These are dollars that have to be used for specific things, right? Renewable energy is a pretty big thing that they can be used for. So do you want to talk about what we applied for that we want to do with these funds?
In this, with this proposal, we went ahead and applied for rooftop solar to assist us in the powering and energy efficiency within the HVAC system. I do believe we're going to skip a little bit ahead to one of the other grants, but one of the other grants, we are applying for a heat pump that will make our HVAC system ready for hookup for solar. So the idea is tying these multiple grants together to provide energy efficiencies for us at the building long term. Believe, if I remember correctly, we have to use those funds by the end of, I think it was like 26. If we choose not to, and we want to change the budget and move to some other project that's eligible, we can do that at any time. I know when we spoke with finance last week, we thought that that's where we were going to head. So when I finalized the application this morning, that's what we did with the budget.
And that's kind of almost what's kicked off a lot of the stuff, right? The energy audit with Johnson Controls, the want to do solar arrays on our buildings, the want to improve our HVAC, and then having to do that building asbestos survey. We know the story from there. So Tim touched on the $100,000 grant that's called the Community Energy Management Grant. That's also through Eagle. That was due June 30. We applied with the assistance of MMDC, as Director Nieport mentioned. As soon as DTE reached out with the grants to the county and MMDC started hosting meetings. We were, whose job is this going to be, and really pulling us together. Thank you, Katie Moira, for being fantastically organized and teaching me to Google Doc. And so that was extremely helpful just to take these across the finish line. So as Tim mentioned, the $100,000 grant, we applied for that heat pump. Now, it's not something we would have put in our system, right? So this would be an extra that the grant monies would pay for. But if we don't do the heat pump now during the construction of the rebuilding, and then later we want to convert to solar, it'll be at least a $300,000 expense to retrofit at that time. So this is smart money. It's getting out in front of it, and of course, long-term energy savings from the whole thing. Now, let's go with the grant in the middle. That was due yesterday. This is Eagle and Michigan Environmental Justice Impact Grant, up to $500,000. The original plan was to apply for HVAC, right? We had to tear out the HVAC in the county administration building. Yes, we're reusing a few pieces that still have some integrity, some of the new boilers. But overall, we need a couple $1 million to put in a new HVAC system. So this $500,000 was going to go towards that, because one of the caveats was indoor air quality. We did something for indoor air quality, we could be eligible. Well, then MMDC, because they're fantastic and very detailed, as we got closer to the deadline yesterday, they realized HVAC could only qualify if it was in a school or a daycare. So we got a little nervous about maybe that's, maybe our application will get thrown out. In talking with chairman last Friday, we talked about the windows in the county administration building. Those have asbestos film coatings, and we decided not to include that in the abatement work that has happened thus far. Those remained. And so the grant was written, the 500,000, to remove the windows from the county building in that rebuild project. They're single pane windows, so hopefully the grant will have some favor in that regard to the energy efficiency of what we're going to put in going forward, right? Over 50 years old, these windows. We even had installed a perimeter heating system in the building due to the inefficiency of the windows at some point. So we just can't get out of our own way here, but we think this is really, really smart money. Otherwise, the rebuilding of that may not involve the replacement of single pane windows, which would be a travesty at this.
It'd be a shame to do all that work and then keep the same windows from 1972 that are single pane and not very energy efficient.
And what we did through time, because of that energy inefficiency, it was letting in so much heat this time of year. That's when the films went on. That's when the coatings went on and said, hey, we don't want that heat in here. So yeah, this came up as one of the things when we work with county departments that they would like to see change the ambiance of that building, and why it's so dark, and can't we open it up? So we'll try.
So that grant allowed for us to do remediation of asbestos, spelled it out very clearly within that $500,000 grant. So we pivoted from the HVAC system into just using it for remediation costs.
And unfortunately, no remediation had already been done. Like it had to be future remediation. It couldn't be applied to the $1 million we've paid so far.
That's smart. And really, the June 14th invoice list kind of points out why we're doing, they're grants, so it's money that comes in for energy efficiency, but our consumer's bill on June 14th was $5,500 for that building. And that's low. That's quite low because the building's empty. They're generally closer to $8,000 a month. So.
Are there any opportunities for, since we're redoing the roofing for the trial court building, right? So any opportunity, since that is a new roof, that the opportunity to put solar on top of that is now, since you won't have to redo the roof with
County administration building.
Yeah, this is for the
Yes.
county administration,
Yes.
but we're not redoing the trial court roofing?
What a great segue. In the fiscal 25 budget, there's one capital improvement request for general fund that's for $40,000 to recoat the roof on the trial court building. Director Shoemaker says if we don't do that now, it's gonna cost us more, right? We've got an opportunity now to recoat it and get it done. So we'd have to look at the lifespan of that, right? But to your point, it's not determined necessarily where it's going. Yeah, yeah.
But you would want to put that on a roof that's new.
Yes.
And the county building roof is a new roof.
Right.
And so there's the place to
Yep.
put it. You don't want to be tearing that stuff off, to put a roof on.
No.
10 years down the road, so.
That's my point. Yeah.
Which is part of the reason we went for this with the grant, knowing the newness of the roof and that we're ready. Here we are ready again.
Just a question on procedure. I know that when departments come before us or elected officials for grants, it's the prerogative of the county board to approve those. And we've got 3 of them. Is that something that we should list in our regular meeting? Approval and authorization to sign?
So a couple of things on the grant. So the one yesterday, Chairman Hope did sign on the application. And remember in your budget resolution every year, a couple of years ago, you built into that resolution that Chairman had the authority to sign for grant funds that would later come back to the board with the grant award. So yesterday we were covered with Chairman Hope being the signer for that grant. The one that was due June 30th, it didn't require Chairman's signature. It talked about an authorized negotiator. So that one was applied for. I'm not sure the same with the one you applied yesterday or
So
today.
we will bring them back to the board.
Once the award.
The award is here and we're actually accepting funds.
But your budget, you already had the forethought to build that in your budget resolution and give that authority as long as that agreement comes back to the board. Once,
Thank you.
because it was just getting redundant.
Those timelines get tight for us sometimes. If we're looking at a grant and we see it and we can't get to the board quick enough, we lose out on the grant because we couldn't come ask for approval to apply. If we can apply, then we'll come in front of the board with that grant funding and accept those funds through the board.
Yep. Good question. Total of $975,000 potential. That's pretty fantastic.
Plus the 375 to our local unit, which is
Yes.
Isabella Township for hosting.
Yeah.
Using free money to save us money long-term. Yep.
Sounds good to me.
Yep, it's a win-win.
Yes, yes, that's good. MMDC. Oh. You're good.
The committee's final business item is discussion regarding the fiscal year 25 budget draft number 2. Kind of just to bring everybody up to par, after our 2.5 request was voted down this past spring, the finance committee started to meet with all the department heads, elected officials to come up with a zero-based budget. We knew that we didn't have the funds to continue operating as we've had in the past years. Past years, we've used our savings to balance out the budget because we didn't have enough revenues to cover all the expenses. Well, we found out, looking at a 10-year forecast, we could no longer do that. Well, with the rejection of the 2.5 mil, we really worked hand in hand with all the, again, elected officials, department heads, and we came up with a zero-based budget that initially came out to be balanced. The county board did not have funds for road patrol in that zero-based budget. However, we thought, okay, let's go for a road patrol millage to see if the citizens want road patrol in the county. But that wouldn't appear until November. But that left a problem in that we have deputies that were only going to be funded through the end of September. So the board did take action to guarantee keeping the road patrol members on through the end of the fiscal year, which added about $550,000 to our budget, which means that our zero base no longer was balanced. We had over $500,000 that we had to come up with either with new revenues or additional cuts. So we continue to meet, and at this point, I'd like to turn this back over to Madam Administrator to explain how we work through this. And probably it's going to still come out that we still have some challenges ahead, but we'll discuss those a little bit further.
I think you did a tremendous walkthrough, Commissioner, of the zero base to the requested, and now we're back to recommended being balanced, which is exciting. We have to balance our 25 budget going forward, right? That's what our long-term forecast is all about, is not using savings to balance anymore. So you'll see the 2025 recommended budget coming in at just over $24.5 million for revenues and expenditures. Some of the changes that were made from the first draft that was built in to cover that, as Commissioner Jazinski has noted, over $500,000 deficit. So one thing we did was brought in, now that the solar farm is permitted, we do expect to see tax revenue from that farm. It comes on as industrial personal property, just like the wind turbines, right? And so there was no revenue built into the fiscal 25 budget from solar. Solar, like wind turbines, depreciates over time. So your first years are your biggest revenue generators, if you will. And then solar depreciates down to 12% over 12 years. So it's kind of aggressive. But when things are under construction, the solar farm won't be complete until next spring. But if it's under construction this year, which it is, we will see some tax revenues from that, because as of December 31st, it will be under construction. So we have built $250,000 in for solar revenues in the 25 fiscal year. Okay. You'll see an increase from permit fees from the zero base to now. That also has to do a lot with the solar farm. Those permit fees come into general fund for some of that, and also some of that is, I think there's escrow built into some of that line too. So those additional revenues or those expenses that we have are covered by those additional revenues. You'll see an increase in federal, state, and local contributions. That's an interesting one for the county. Those are the recreational marijuana revenues that continue to go up and up for us. We had built an additional $130,000 into next year's draft budget for recreational marijuana. Between those things, also another thing we brought into general fund are the soil erosion, sedimentation control fees that used to come into, I think they were split, Tim, if that's correct, between general fund and the outside inspections fund. Those are now being handled within the general fund. So all told, we're up about $400,000 in revenues from the first draft. We cut about $200,000 in expenses to bring us to that 24.5 balance. If you go to page 2, this is where the general fund expenditures start. I know when we started the zero base, we talked about potentially accounts payable, payroll moving to another department. That department then lost some staff. It wasn't the right time. So those positions are built back into admin. At the time, we talked about potentially moving away from administrator controller and having an accountant in the treasurer's office with the general ledger. That is now moved back into admin. So if you see a big cut to the treasurer or a big increase to admin, that's what's going on there. It's just moving those functions back. You'll see one thing I do want to point out from the current amended budget to the recommended budget, we're almost $100,000 less in the equalization department. there was a decision to contract those services out because that business model could do things cheaper than we could employ employees. So we see, hopefully that's working there. Of big note, there is a large contingency, what I would call large in this draft budget of just over 328,000. When we used to budget for contingency, we would budget 50,000 every year and then take things out of fund balance when it came up anyway. So that's why we stopped budgeting for a contingency. But the commission really wanted to see something built into this fiscal 25 for contingency, being the first year we're trying this zero base. We imagine there'll be a lot of unknowns. I do want to mention the prosecuting attorney's office. It looks like there's more budgeted there. That's not because they've asked more. It's because they have a vacant assistant prosecuting attorney position that we missed at budgeting time because there was no one in that position.
Right.
We missed it and didn't pull it in. Please don't confuse this with the ARPA funded senior assistant prosecuting attorney position.
Right.
That is still separate. That is still not funded. As Commissioner Jalazinski pointed out, there is funding built into the FY24 budget for first quarter for road deputies. You see that in the sheriff's departments and the secondary road patrol, marine safety, all of those. Corrections budget, you'll see an uptick there. That is from, we just paid some retro pay back to the first of the year because the contract was finally executed. You saw that contract, I think, back in March. Sheriff's been working through some management things. It was finally signed. And so when that retro pay was given to those corrections officers who've waited for the finalization of the contract, what that does in the current year, we budgeted for that increase because we knew about it. So now in the current year, the activity is a little more true. So when you run these budget numbers, again, that increase is in there. So it's a little more accurate for next year, if you will. That's why you see that uptick in corrections. It's just more accurate numbers. Same kind of thing happened with the 10% healthcare increase, which is now, we know, built in there. Animal control budget, you'll see, is way down because there is no dollars in here for the HATS contract at this time. Part of what that large contingency was for is to kind of consider some of those things still not funded. Right? Probably the biggest change after that is all the way down in operating transfers out. You'll see a $480,000 change to that. We lowered that by 480, and what comes with that is, remember in the zero-based budget, we had built in an annual bond payment amount of $750,000. That was to make the annual bond payment on the borrow that we have to make to rebuild the county administration building, right? We're considering an $11 million borrow. That would be an annual payment for maybe 30-year borrow. So we have to have that in our base budget going forward, but we know construction hasn't started. It will still be taking place in fiscal 25, so we will not make our first principal payment in 25. We'll only make an interest payment. So we've worked with our financial advisors that that's probably going to be more in the neighborhood of $250,000. So great, that frees up 500,000, but only this year, right? Only in the first year, because you need that in your budget to make your $750,000 payment going forward. So what would be a good thing that could fund one-time cost? Obviously, first quarter for your road deputy, right? So that's a really good cover for that expense because it's one time and it'll still be in that budget next year. But that's where that's essentially how this budget got balanced, right? From that $590,000 deficit we had in the first round. How we got to zero. Are there any questions?
I would say, were you gonna go into this list here at all, or you want me to just make some comments on it?
We can,
Okay. So I know we're coming up to August the 6th for a 6.61 renewal of operating millage that we've had for decades. And it funds the basic services of the county, plus the townships have a 1 mil that serves the township services, including their contributions towards brining and road projects for maintenance of cemeteries and that the township has, and for a number of other responsibilities. Those will be coming up for renewal on August the 6th. And I see these red signs going up about saving taxes. No doubt, if that doesn't pass, there's going to be some savings. But you're going to lose a lot of important services that the public depends on. Plus, we do have a couple of other millages coming up.
Commissioner, we're probably getting in areas where we probably shouldn't get into as far as we're not allowed to endorse.
I'm not trying to endorse it. I'm just saying
I know,
it's, people are gonna have to make their own choices whether they want these type of services. And I know Parks and Recreation's coming up and iRide's coming up. Some people depend upon those services, others do not. So I'm not advocating for one way or the other, but it is important that people get out and vote. The one thing that we are looking at is in November, the road patrol. And again, we can't advocate for or against that, but to me, it just seems like public safety is important in this county, and road patrol provides that. And people will have to make a choice on whether they want a strong public safety presence or they do not. Even though at this point in time, with draft number 2 and working towards a zero-based budget, we are stronger and closer to having a balanced budget than we have in any of the 10 years that I've been previously on the board and adopting a budget. We're very close. Keep in mind, however, that it was pointed out, we have a contingency of about 315,000,
328.
328. That 328, at this point, we don't have any COLA, cost of living increase for general across the board for county employees. We're looking at sharp increases in our health insurance benefit, probably increases in the benefits that we have to provide, the care for we have to provide for our people that were incarcerated in our correctional facilities. We don't have all the funds there to cover that. We are doing a wage study. We know we're under a lot of pressure from people that have opportunities to move elsewhere for much better pay than we're providing. And, you know, it's the county government is served by its employees. We provide services. And without good, experienced people, those service, the quality and quantity will go down. And so even though we're doing this wage study, I don't know where those dollars are going to come in to fully implement that. So we still have some challenges ahead of us. And hopefully we'll find that we do find some additional revenues. As to cutting to the bone, I think we've pretty much cut to the bone. I'm not sure where we can make additional cuts at this point. There's things that wish we could bring back. But that's where we're at. I think I want to give hats off to administration and the members of the Finance and Administration Committee that have worked so diligently to make the progress that we've made, and we'll continue to do it. We'll be responsible to the taxpayers of this county to do the best job we have with the funds that we do have.
Me being the numbers guy, you realize that we eliminated over 15% or reduced our overall budget by 15%. That's in terms of government of any kind, 15% is a very large number. And we've been able to achieve that. I realize there's some cost to that. But unfortunately, given our financial situation moving forward for the next 4 or 5 years, objectively, we didn't have many options. So we've adopted this process. We've worked through this process very diligently with the administration and finance and the chair and all the department heads. And I'll reiterate again, I can't express my appreciation enough for all the hard work that they put into providing their budgets to the county that showed substantial savings across the board. So again, thank you to all of you that participated and are going to be able to make this happen. So we're going to have a balanced budget. We're going to be able to pay all of our outstanding obligations moving forward. But we are dependent upon that 6.61 mils to make that happen.
Yeah, I just want to go down a list of items that I'm looking at, and it has to do with the vote no and the vote yes. I mean, the three things that we have on there, a yes vote is no new taxes. Flat out, no new taxes with the 3 yes votes. What you're running into, and this is just a small list, this doesn't cover everything, but animal control, animal shelter, Central Michigan Health District, Central Michigan Department, Community Development, Drain Commission, Treasury, County Clerk, Administration, Human Rights, Medical Examiner, MSU Extension, 4-H, Prosecuting Attorneys, Public Defenders, Sheriff's Office, Recycling. I mean, we've worked so hard to get that into the site. Substance Abuse Services, Trial Courts, Veterans. I mean, you're veterans. If you're voting no, these are things that are being effective. And I'm not telling anybody how to vote, but you're affecting, you think this is just about taxes. I mean, this is a county that this has been going on for 46 years. And for us to go backwards now just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We have a great county. I mean, our Parks and Rec is great. You want to influence the busing. In general, the way the whole nation is going, there's a lot of fear out there. And I just think if everybody knew how much they're affecting it in their vote, I just don't think people are aware of it. And that's why I'm reading these items. You're affecting a lot of people, and we need to work as a nation, as a county together, and a lot less negativity that's going on. I commend the department for going through and getting it down 15,000. That's or 15%. That's amazing. We're going to get to the balanced budget. All these that are on this commission have worked so hard and want to see us do the right thing. That's all I've got.
I just want to commend Commissioner Embry. That's something when I was kind of giving the attaboys, the people that worked on the zero-based budget. Administration has been wonderful. The elected officials and department heads, they've worked hand in hand cooperatively. And all the employees right down to the ranks have had a part in this. And it has been truly a team effort to provide the services that we can with the dollars that we have, and continue to do that.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments?
I just want to thank Melissa, since we're thanking people, because we all know she's the one that makes this
All this happened.
makes it all happen. So, thank you, Miss Melissa. Not feeling so well today.
Since you brought that up, I will say Melissa's done a ton of work on this budget.
Oh, yeah.
And we've saved, I don't remember the numbers. You had a sheet at one time, how much we've saved just on contracted financial services. that we used to pay a firm to do a lot of the stuff that Melissa's doing now. We've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last just a couple, 2, 3 years.
Yes, sir, we're going in the
So-
right direction.
Not been easy, but we've been at it. So, thank you.
This won't be moved on until we get the next draft version in the future, but it was a very good discussion. Thank you. With that, the work of the Finance and Administration Committee has been completed for this evening. This work session.
Thank you. Commissioners, yeah, you're not getting off that easy. Brings us down to Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
All right, first item, consider approving the service agreement and software license between Enhanced Voting LLC and Isabella County dated August 1st, 2024, and authorize board person to sign the same. And we have County Clerk Mindy Lux to explain the switch that we have on the software licensing. Well, yeah, well, we're getting that started. So this is not a change in price. It won't cost us anything to change, and essentially we're just moving to a company that's taking over our current software. Go ahead. Yeah, there, you're done.
Yeah, you don't have to explain.
This is kind of thrown at us all of a sudden. We used to have electionreporting.com. So the night of the elections, IT will take the information and download it into election reporting, and then everyone can view the election results as they come in. Now they have a new enhanced way of reporting with this software. And it's more user-friendly, has a lot more options for voters to download different reports and look at different things precinct by precinct. This actually, we thought was going to go up, but it actually came down. I had budgeted $2,500 for the year for election reporting, and this one comes out to $1,200. So it's kind of a win-win for us all.
Awesome. Any questions?
I would say in committee, we had pending legal review, but since then Attorney Perone has looked at this, incorporated the version they have attached has his
That's a
changes.
good one with
Perfect.
the changes in it to Michigan.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect.
All right, seeing no questions, we'll move this forward to tonight's regular session. Next item, consider approving application to amend a farmland development rights agreement deferment period to allow a solar facility for PA 116 number 37-43566-123150. And again, these are brought forward by County Clerk Mindy Lux. We have a kind of a new process for the PA 116. They're not coming through Planning Commission. Because these are basically deferments of the use of the land for PA 116 since it has solar on it. We want to have the ability to tax the industrial property tax on it at the full rate. So this is obviously good for us. Right. Hey,
Excuse me, Commissioner. Yeah,
Commissioner Engler.
yeah, there's a whole slew of these 116 agreements, so basically, we wanted to get here and ask any questions, and I guess it's a good time to ask our questions here, and then we go through some of the formalities later, but as you all know, PA 116 is a farmland preservation. It's a contract you enter with the state. You'll get some property tax relief from the state depending on the income that you have in there. So there's a complicated formula that goes through there. So these are different than the wind, because in the wind, you're allowed to take 116, the advantages of it. These are deferments, so they basically, you do not get any advantages from 116 based on your income, so.
So maybe before we get started, we'll do a couple introductions. My name is Emily Palacios. I work with DT on the permitting of their solar facilities across the state. And with me is Jason Hanneth. He is the site manager for the Mission Road Solar project. And we're pleased to be here tonight to talk about the PA 116 actions that we're asking that you take, along with later in the agenda, we've got our proposed decommissioning agreement and bond for the solar facility. What you have before you tonight are 4 related requests involving PA 116 properties. Amongst those requests is one that is specific to DTE, where DTE has acquired a piece of property and is going to be having the farmland agreement transferred into its name and then deferred for the deferment period that you've just described. The other 3 applications or other 3 parcels that are the subject of tonight are combinations between just simple deferments. That is the item that is number 2. That application is just a simple deferment of the benefits of the PA 116 program for the period of time that the facility or the land is being used as part of the Mission Road facility. And that depends on the length of the term of the lease or easement agreement that's in place. In this case, some of you may be aware that DT is going to be constructing and operating this project using easements that were initially acquired by Apex. And so they have a slightly different term than what DTE's standard easement does. DTE typically has an easement that is a 35-year easement starting at commercial operations. The Apex easements are 30 years with 2 10-year extensions. So possible outside term of 50 years. MDARD calculates the deferment period for these agreements. They'll be looking at the easements and concluding for themselves what the appropriate deferment period is. We're not coming anywhere close to it, but the maximum deferment period is 90 years.
Wow.
I know. Wow. Somebody doesn't want to go back and visit the paperwork potentially. But no, none of these come anywhere close to that. 2 of the PA 116 parcels that are being incorporated into the project require splits because not all of the parcel that is under the PA 116 agreement is going to be used as part of the facility. And so the landowner would like to continue to have those PA 116 benefits on the balance of the property. So in the case of the funnel application, at number 7, you see there's a split that's proposed. Same for the Papoy application at number 9. That's where a split's being proposed in order to allow the landowner to continue to have PA 116 benefits on the balance of the property that was covered by that initial agreement. The one application that's in the mix of the 9 that are presented that I haven't touched upon is number 5, and that is related to the funnel property. And in that case, it was determined that there needs to be a transfer in the name of who's holding that agreement. The property has transferred from the landowner in his name individually to his trust. And so we want to make sure that the amended farmland agreement lines up. So the first action is to transfer the original agreement and then to enter into the amended agreement that establishes the deferment period. And then Funnel also has a split because doesn't want to lose PA 116 benefits across the board for the period of our amended farmland development agreements. So that was a lot. And I just want to pause and see if anybody has any questions about the mechanics of what I just described.
Just, oh,
Go ahead.
yeah, just for how we set these up on the splits. And we decided, because we got them in different orders and everything, but the splits are going to be at the end. And the reason we're doing that is they do not have a parcel number yet. So we approved the first, and then the splits will come on because it's just a request for a split.
Yeah.
Once they're through the split, then they'll get a separate parcel number. So that's why we decided to put these in these orders, because it had to go on a certain level. So that's where where
It made
goes in.
perfect sense to me once I started assigning names and types of applications. I'm like, I get the flow here, and it made perfect sense to me. So those are the series of requests that we have with respect to the PA 116 parcels that are being incorporated into the project. And I guess I would just ask if anybody has any other questions about the applications, or even, about the project in general at this point before we get to our decommissioning item later in the meeting.
Commissioner Engler, didn't you have questions?
I was going to see if anybody else had a question, because this is a little bit off this process, but go ahead.
This is gonna be a little off too, but I noticed on our regular meeting, we didn't vote on these by roll call. Do you have any idea if that's a requirement, or if it can be this voice vote? No,
Eve, a voice vote is okay in this instance. Generally, roll call votes are for, very specific items.
Pending.
I would ask what you do normally is probably the course I'd follow.
good. Okay, good.
Oh, okay. There you go.
So they won't, is that what you said?
No, she's saying
They
yes.
will. Oh, because of the taxes involved. Okay, not that we're spending money, but the issue involves money. Okay. So my apologies.
Yeah.
Chairman, those roll calls are not on your agenda, but you'll have to
Okay.
remember to call them. Thanks. Thank
My
you.
question is more, and you might not be able to answer this one. I'm famous for those kind of questions, but going forward, since you probably, you had more experience with solar panels. And it has to do with the farmland. Of course, I'm a farmer, and we've had our farm since 1880, so preservation is real important. So one is, and I've also served on the board of review, so I'm concerned about how they value farmland and what the property, because now you got a piece of property that's going to produce, let's just use a small number of $1,000 an acre. And, I've made $1,000 an acre, but it has been gross and not net. So there's a big difference in those numbers. So, of course, being on the board of review is usually they don't assess farmland until there's a sale. So at this point, there's no sales, but the farmland that has those contracts, it actually has an increased value. So what happens 4 or 5 years down the road, somebody decided they want to cash out, and it'd be like an insurance policy where you sell to somebody else. So a land that might be worth, let's say, $5,000, it gets sold for $50,000 because it has 15 years left on this contract. Will that affect the farmland values, or I've been contacting Farm Bureau, Michigan Farm Bureau, to talk about this. So will that affect the farm value for everybody in the pool, or will that, if they're going to have that in a separate category? So I'm not sure right now, but I'm just concerned what happens. Like I said, right now, I don't foresee anybody selling any property, but that is a concern, is how you're going to value that land and how will affect the taxes for everybody else in the ag community. And so far, no one has an answer for that, but I'm kind of curious that if
So-
you've heard that before or not.
I've heard these questions, and they're questions that I've been looking into recently. I'm a fellow Board of Review member. We met this morning
No.
for our July meeting. I think there's some real open questions about how some of the logistics around assessing is going to be handled. To your point, yeah, our assessors do studies on a regular basis, and they do sales studies to determine the trends with respect to the value of property so that they can properly determine what it should be assessed for SEV purposes on, on a going forward basis. In the case of a solar facility, you really have a mix between land value and personal property value, right? Because all of that solar equipment is it's industrial personal property and subject to an industrial personal property tax. And so it seems to me that if we continue to follow sort of standard assessing procedures, assessors are going to have to distinguish between kind of a value that might be associated with the personal property versus a value that's associated with just the raw land. When I've been looking at the State Tax Commission website and even looking at MDARD's website, they are right now a little ambiguous. You can't find any spot on answers to FAQ about what happens when, you know, a solar facility has been put on top of agricultural land and then there's been some sale, and what is the assessor supposed to do with that sale? Now, I think just as assessors now can kind of look at sales and determine that they're not arm's length or there's some basis for distinguishing them, that may be something that the State Tax Commission develops some rules around. But I think that there's very much a question there about what is going to be the correct approach to the classification of the land use wise for taxing purposes, and then how it gets, you know, treated further in the future if there is a sale.
Well, I could see the point where DTE, you could make the argument that it's the equipment, it's the panels that are the value of the land. And that maybe you would have to make a determination, maybe after a 10 or 15, what's the value of those remaining depreciated out? And that you could not consider that in the value of the agriculture property.
I think that's right. And I think that's right even from day one, because it's personal property. So it's not treated as a fixture to the real estate. So it's treated separately in terms of valuation. And that is where there is sort of some of the value being derived by the landowner. But I honestly say that I think that in terms of how assessors are going to be there's no clarity in terms of how assessors have been told so far about how they are to treat this. And I think somebody at the State Tax Commission needs to start looking at it, frankly.
Yeah. Couple ones. So I'll leave that alone, and we'll continue on if there, I'm sorry, Chairman.
Oh, you're
Chairman,
fine.
Commissioner.
Yeah, not chairman.
Yeah.
Are there any questions on this particular application that's just the simple deferment for this number? No? Okay, we'll move this forward to the regular session. Number 3 is consider approving the application to transfer request and declaration farmland development rights agreement for PA 116 number 37-71015-123128. This is a transfer from a gentleman to DTE on this parcel. Are there any questions for our?
Oh, yeah, I looked into this too because I saw it and I was like, wait a minute, this says 116 is transferable to anybody as long as you keep that in farmland. So I'm sure they can actually, but they're probably just looking for the future, but as long as it's continued to be farmland, that's 116 is completely transferable. So I think you're looking for expansion next to that property. It's just a speculation on my part, so I will not go any farther with that. But as long as that you uphold the terms of the 116 contract and it stays in agriculture, DTE could take the advantages off from that land. So is that correct?
That is correct. And I think it is also in part termination of PA 116 agreements prior to their natural expiration are discouraged by state law. So we're in a position where we just need to transfer and hold.
And a regular 116, in case you don't know, that there's a penalty at the end that you have to pay 7 years of the advantages that you received. So that's why a lot of these are going into trust, and because there is a penalty to actually stop it because the state wants you to contribute it. So in fact, my dad signed up for 80 years on one, so he didn't go 90, but he did do 80. So anyways, but it's fully transferable, and if you want to keep it in farmland, that's what you do. So.
All right, any other questions about this transfer? Okay, we'll move that on to the regular session. Number 4 is consider approving application to amend a farmland development rights agreement deferment period to allow a solar facility for PA 116 number 37-71015-123128. So it's the same parcel. And we're now, after the transfer, deferring that PA 116. If,
Oh.
go ahead,
Oh, you're all done? Sorry,
we'll move it on.
Okay, 5, 6, and 7 deals with the same parcel, and it's just the way we explained earlier. So we'll just go through 5, 6, 7, and we'll ask for any questions on there. 8, 9 is a separate parcel. So anyways, consider approving farmland development right transfer request for PA 116-37-66768-123-127. Is there any questions on that one? If none, we'll move that forward to tonight's session. Number 6, consider approving application to amend farmland development right agreement deferment period to allow a solar facility for PA 116 37-66768-123-127. Has to do with the one earlier. Any questions on that one? Seeing none, we'll move that forward to tonight's business session. Number 7, consider approving split requests. Number 1, 80 acres and split requests. Number 2, 39.01 acres for the farmland development right agreement, PA 116 37-66768-123-127. And that is a request, so it hasn't been split yet. So any more questions on that? Okay, we'll move that forward to tonight's business session. 8, 9 has to do with the same parcel number. So first up is consider improving the application to amend a farmland development rights agreement deferment period to allow a solar facility for PA 116 37-70430-123-108. Is there any question on that part, that agreement? Seeing none, we'll move that forward to tonight's business session. And number 9 is the same parcel, is consider approving split requests. Number 1, 65.07 acres and split request. Number 2, 57.03 acres for the farmland development rights agreements for PA 116 37-70430-123-108. Is there any questions on that? Seeing none, we will move that forward to tonight's work or business session. And Mr. Chairman, that completes the work of the Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. That went pretty well.
Folks.
You guys did great on Tuesday, by the way. How about that? Like, that was a lot of conversation, and from the professional, you.
It got a little
guys
messy.
right. It's an ugly video. Yeah, don't watch it.
That brings us down to Human Resources and Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our first item is consider accepting the county approval agency for material management planning in Isabella County, as well as appointing material recovery facility director Jay Orton and operation supervisor Charity Sweet as Isabella County designated planning agency, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. So we have the director of the Jay Orton here to break this down for us. Hi, Jay.
Right. Good evening. As you can see, there's a lot on this staff report, a lot of different things, all pertaining to Part 115, material management planning. The first motion that is on the, as Commissioner Moreno had stated, was for the county approval agency of material management planning to appoint myself and my operations supervisor, Charity Sweet, as a designated planning agents for the Isabella County for material management planning. And I'll go into an overview once we kind of work through that stuff. But one of the biggest things that I've been working on is you're all aware, and that's that I've been working very diligently trying to pull in and secure an ILA from, actually, it will end up being 8 counties. We have, I think, 7 of them that are signed now or very close to being finished up. I've been invited to speak at Midland County's Board of Commission meeting in August at their next board meeting for that approval on that ILA and for them to sign and send in their notice of intent. So as it stands right now, it does look like everything is coming together as I have been working on, and we will have 8 counties total on a material management plan. This Friday's meeting, this coming Friday's meeting is in Reed City for our Material Management Planning Committee. We are very diligently working towards getting bylaws in place to kind of dictates how that committee will work and the workings within that committee, how the voting delegates will be approved through that bylaw section to get all of that in place, making sure that we're doing everything for each individual county to cover our interests in our individual counties. That's one of the biggest things that all of us wanted to see. Myself, Commissioner Engler's put a tremendous amount of work into this, and Commissioner Moreno has helped an awful lot as well, to make sure that we're covering our best interests for each individual county. And, you know, and every county does have that same mindset as we continue to work forward. So we'll come out of it with a very solid committee and very solid bylaws that will do everything we can to protect each individual county. One of the other things that I did send in within your board packet was a letter that was a preface to the ILA that was sent to each individual county. I bring that up because of the fact that the third page of that attachment, you can look at the dollar figures that is associated with the material management planning coming from Eagle or from the state of Michigan. As you can see there, I think you'll see the totals of it somewhere around at the course of 3 years, you're going to be somewhere around $2 million of income that is generated. It's not necessarily for Isabella County, but it will be for that core county area of them 8 counties. So it will be, you know, that dollar figure of over $2 million will be part of that material management planning committee's charge to make sure that that money is delegated in appropriate manners to work through material management planning in each individual county. So, very significant amount of money, as you can see, over a 3-year period. Any questions on the first motion that is there?
Go ahead, Ben.
Just because materials management planning is all new and all of these terms are so new, I just want to clarify and make sure. So part of this motion is that the board's going to accept the county's approval agency. So that means there could be another board that this board gives authority to, but this board is keeping that county approval agency. Things are going to come to this board.
Yes, and what that really, this idea and design behind that is that because of the 60,000 plus 10, if you're working with another county, whether you chose to accept the CAA, which is a county approval agency, or not, you as commissioners would have to be, so to speak, the fiduciary with that funds that comes into each individual county. By accepting the CAA, what you're doing is giving you the ability to have authority as to that we would have to come back to the material management planning. Well, I shouldn't say the material management planning. The DPA would have to come back to you as commissioners, which would be myself and my operations supervisor would have to come back for your permission to allocate funds that would be required as far as the planning process is concerned.
Important clarification. And then again, what's in a word, you and Charity are an agency if this goes through, but that's just what they call it. The DPA, Designated Planning Agency, is actually a person. It's confusing as ever, but thank you, Jake, for explaining, clarifying.
And each individual county will have to appoint a DPA. And then as a material management planning committee itself, through them bylaws, they will establish a DPA for that committee. That, so what it, in the reasoning, so that you understand, is that the state of Michigan really wants to be able to work with one person or one agency, so to speak, on how that committee is processing through that 3-year step of material management planning. So what will come out of that is there'll be election of obviously of a secretary to be able to take notes for the minutes. And then the other part of it will end up being, and I would hope that it would end up being Isabella County is appointed as the DPA, because we have been the driving force in all of that. So, and I think that most of the counties have recognized that, and we'll continue to advocate for that portion of it. But that's the reasoning behind it, is that each individual county will have to come back to their board for approval on different things as we continue to work through this process. But Eagle only wants to have to deal with one agency, one person. So, the person that ends up deemed the DPA out of that material management planning committee will report to Eagle. They'll have to develop a plan.
Quit saying they, Jake.
Moving forward. So
As Director Borton.
so
alluding to something I think we might already know.
yeah. So at any rate, we like I said, that's where the first motion is as far as you accepting your county approval agency, and then appointing myself and Charity Sweet as the DPA for Isabella County.
I have one question. This has been a long process, and you have been out in front of this whole thing right from the get-go. I'm wondering if you can give, for some of the folks that haven't heard this whole idea, what was the impetus that started this state mandates on the materials management plans? Can you give us just a brief rundown on that?
I think really where the state was trying to go with all of this is that they're trying to not just the real impetus is that they're trying to increase the recycling rate in the state of Michigan. That's really what it comes back to. But after they really thought about how that recycling rate is assessed throughout the state of Michigan, they realized that they're leaving a lot of things off the table. They were looking at recycling, the amount of material. For the last, I think 5 or 6 years, I've had to report the amount of material that comes in and out of our facility to the state of Michigan. Requirement by Part 175, that we have to, it's a mandated reporting process for us. The state of Michigan realized that, okay, we're leaving things out of the table, like whether it's food waste collection, whether it's composting, whether it's building material that could be diverted and reused. So they started looking at the broad spectrum all the way through Eagle's charge, and realized that they can increase their recycling rate. In all honesty, they could increase the recycling rate in the state of Michigan by adding composting to it. And as it is, I think now we're at 23%. When we originally started, we were at I think 13%, and we're at 23% within 3 years. So just these changes in that talk and them doing a self-assessment on what needs to be considered as material that needs to be managed. They're already increasing the rate. And the hope is that by 2027 or 2030, that the state of Michigan would be at a 50% recycling rate. So, significant increases in that side of it. So, but it's not just, it's no longer recycling. And that's the biggest part of it and the best part of knowing as I move forward that, starting to consider all the material that could be managed and how that process is handled.
There's no more questions. We'll move on to the next item.
Okay, our next item, consider approving the interlocal agreement between the County of Isabella, the County of Clare, the County of Gladwin, the County of Gratiot, the County of Mecosta, the County of Midland, the County of Ogama, and the County of Osceola to establish a managed multiple county material management plan and authorize the board chair to sign the same.
All right. This comes back to what we referenced in the previous conversation, and that's the ILA, interlocal agreement. That will be a binding contract for material management planning over I think the timeline on that was going to be a 5-year timeline, even though the state of Michigan's requirement is 3 years that there is funding for. So that the idea behind the ILA for us, obviously, is that if we continue to move forward with plans of upgrades to the recycling facility, that we wanted to be able to make sure that we had the material to justify that upgrade to the facility. And that upgrade, looking at the feasibility study from 2023, it indicates that they would expect within a 5-year period from the time that it is operational, that we can get upwards of 25,000 tons within a 5-year period. Right now, we're running about 6,000 tons a year. It's in the amount of material. And in fact, Commissioner Engler and I had a meeting today with Waste Management, and they've been having some strategic planning as they're looking at the state and how they approach things. And we left one gentleman scratching his head like he couldn't believe that we tied 8 counties together and with the intention of flow controlling it, because he started out referencing that we want to be able to move material into our Detroit facility that they're in the process of building. And now they're going to go back and have a conversation amongst themselves to see where they move forward with all of that, knowing that we're putting a hub and spoke process in place now. Hopefully that'll be attractive to them to be able to maybe garner a little bit more interest, and we'll continue to have conversations as we move forward. But a very good conversation that we had today. So.
Any questions?
Just a few comments. Of course, you didn't know what's going to happen, but Director Borton, you forgot something on there, and the MMP group has a name now, so which is always important now. So it is the Heartland Group. It's important to get that in there. Putting this together, and you talked about a little bit about the state match on there and the planning, 60,000 for the planning. Well, most of that's plus the extra 10,000 per county. So adds up real fast. One of the things that I don't know if you realize, but the 50 cent per cap is going to be individual counties will have that to spend as they want. So that's coming into this. I think a lot of them thought the Isabella County was going to run them. We were going to take the money and we were going to build our MRF facility, and that has nothing to do with it. It's completely separate. All we're looking for is commitment to bring material to this. So I think that was the openness to work together on this. I think was a lot of the work that, of course, Jake went to all their meetings, and I think Commissioner Embry went to some too. I said the openness and the cooperation to work together and not to get one thing accomplished, to make sure that certain companies didn't come in and control the market, and that we'd be able to allow recycling cheap and for everybody. So I think we'll have a very similar goals, and that was one of the big pushes. So,
and I think, and I'll let you in just a second here, Commissioner Moreno. Your comment's extremely important, but one of the things that I want to touch on and what Frank was just indicating was we're doing the right things. We even managed to, inadvertently to kind of put enough pressure on the city of Mount Pleasant to look at the way that they were positioning their contract, and they made changes to it. The city's contract was originally going to be an opt-in for recycling. So if you wanted recycling in the city of Mount Pleasant, the way that an agreement was written, you had to call to ask for a container to be able to be part of that. And that changed. So, it's not really even an opt-out now. Everybody will have access to recycling within the city. So, as we continue to work through this and everything continues to move forward, we understand the influence that it has just for Isabella County. So.
Commissioner Moreno?
Yeah, what I want to say is I'm real excited about this. I've been involved a long time, and the cool thing is some of the counties that we are joining together with didn't have any at all, and part of the new law is if you have a municipality of 5,000 or more, you have to have curbside recycling. So it's a proactive government. It's a great goal to increase the recycling rate to 50%. And also it's a really good way to do something about climate change, since all these things will not be just thrown in the ground, but be used again and put into the circular economy. I think this is really Isabella County stepping up and meeting the future challenges that we have in this world. And I'm really proud of us and all the counties that joined with us. And I'm glad that this is happening to Michigan, because it'll really make a big difference in more than one way.
Well said. Commissioner Emery?
Broad overall view of this, think about 8 counties, or 83 counties in Michigan. If nearly 10% of all the counties in Michigan are going to be a part of Heartland. If my calculations are correct, it's anywhere between 425 and 450,000 people that Heartland will serve in the state of Michigan. And that's pretty substantial. So again, kudos to Director Borton for pulling all this together. Very impressive.
Okay, no other questions. We'll move it to tonight's meeting. Thanks, Jake.
Got one more.
Oh,
Remember, after committee, we added
right, that's right.
wasn't there in the committee. Yes, and this is for that actual notice of intent that will be submitted to Eagle about the fact that we're going to do a multi-county materials management plan.
Right. The item is consider approving the submission of notice of intent for the State of Michigan Department of Environmental, Great Lakes, Energy, Material Management Planning, and authorize the board chair to sign the same.
All right, so the notice of intent, and I think most all of you are aware that myself, with conversations with not only Administrator Frost, but with Commissioner Engler, and that's that we knew that we would not be able to get every county on board by the July 6th deadline. So we've chose to file a letter of extension with Eagle. All the other counties that we are working with have filed that same letter. And we've moved that date from July 6th out to August 31st. So our notice of intent does not need to be filed until August 31st. And I bring that to the forefront because we're still waiting on Eagle to be able to tell us what the material management plan is. Don't get me wrong. It's a massive government agency trying to work through a lot of bureaucracy and language on how that material management plan is written and how it sounds. So not only to be able to make sure that we were getting all the ILAs in place, but I also think that it is in the county's best interest to wait for as long as possible to file that IL or a notice of intent with the state of Michigan with that in mind, hopefully we'll see that language before then. We may very well not, but it just makes sense for us to wait closer to the end of this to be able to make sure that we are maybe having a chance to look at language before we file it.
Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah,
Commissioner Engler.
just for a little bit update too. Our conversations with Eagle, we are not behind the 8 ball on this. We're one of the probably farther ahead than probably probably majority of the states. So, so I think just about everybody filed for extension. I think that was in there, but except for the ones that were going by singles.
The last that I had seen is that they had, I think they've had 13 counties that's filed their notice of intent already. That's all. And so everything else is either filed for extension, working on getting their ILAs and everything else in place. And some counties are already entering into contract with firms to be able to write a material management plan for them. That's one of our next steps. But this is all, there's, it's baby steps to start with. And once you get rolling downhill, everything will move a lot faster. But as we continue to move through it, one of the next things that we'll be bringing to the board will be, I expect, will not only be the bylaws for approval, but by the commissioners, but also a RFP for material management, someone to help write that material management plan. So that will not be a low number, but it will be based and paid for by the funding that is provided by Eagle.
More questions?
One purchase process question, the motion's authorized board chair to sign. I know it's an electronic submission of the notice of intent, so when you're ready, if authorized tonight, please, let's work to figure out how to get that submitted on time.
And I believe that Julie did add the notice of intent paperwork so that we at least have some language for you to be able to look at and file through. So once you go online to file that notice, that you can actually have it filled out and ahead of time to be able to just click down through, fill the information out and move on. So
This part right here, these kind of.
No,
No.
it would be
That we-
attached to your agenda because it wasn't with your committee, so it
Oh.
looks like that. It's an electronic form. Mhm.
No, I think what you have there, Commissioner, is that's actually the ILA in a signature page, which the chairman, if they so choose, this evening, will sign that ILA. And eventually we'll get that all the signatures will be on there in one document, which will get registered in the clerk's office so that it is on file within the county. But we just need to be able to get all of them in place, and then we'll make sure the document does get completely updated so that it's one document with all the signatures on. Some of the convenience out of that and talking with legal counsel was, to a benefit, but also it ended up being more work on legal counsel's part that I think at least 4, if not more, of the counties that is involved with this actually uses Coldstone and Toski. So they needed to send out notification that they were looking at an agreement that had their name on it for each individual county. So, but the benefit of that is that after the legal review on that document on the ILA, every county then it didn't need to spend the money to have the review done because are the ones that were involved with Coastal Karntowski already had it done.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just to we are waiting for the last minute because we don't want to be hit with a curveball because they're still writing the regulations. So,
Yeah.
So want to have it filed and something we didn't figure. So it just makes sense to wait till the deadline to hit it. So.
I think the biggest thing of it is that we'll have the documents in place with the signatures on them. It's just a matter of we wait for as long as we can on it to be able to make sure that we hopefully get a chance to look at language first.
Not holding my breath.
Any more things to say? Seeing, hearing none, we'll have this on our this evening's agenda.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, our fourth item, consider approving the Pere Marquette Rail Trail Beautification Project, Mount Pleasant Area Community Foundation, Spring 2024 grant agreement for the awarded amount of $6,350 and authorized board chair to sign the same. We have Alexis Hanson here, Parks Director.
Hello, so this is just a pretty straightforward grant agreement from the Mount Pleasant Area Community Foundation. We had applied for a little bit more. We had applied for 11,000. We were awarded $6,350, so we're just gonna phase the project. These are gates that will replace bollards along the trail, so they don't all have to be done at once. And actually, the Access to Recreation Fund asked that we start with the sections that had the largest gaps between intersections, so that if there was an emergency on the trail, the easiest access would be available at points that had longer distance between intersections. So we have mapped those out and identified those, and that's where we'll start with this project. And basically, this is just there's no match required. So, you know, if we move forward with the agreement after tonight's meeting, the funding will be distributed, and then this project will be on the books for fiscal year 2025. And there will be some manufacturing that has to take place for the gates. And so that'll take place hopefully over the winter, and then we would be looking at next spring, summer, actually getting these installed. Currently, we just have a post style bollard where there's a padlock at the bottom. They're very heavy and they can be cumbersome to remove. This is a really sleek gate style that still blocks the flow of traffic, but as soon as you take the padlock and the pin out, you can open that gate and an emergency vehicle could get through there, or a maintenance vehicle could get through. And they also have kind of a V-shaped arm where you could replace aluminum signage really efficiently and inexpensively over the course of the life of the trail. So this is a design that we're borrowing from the city of Midland, and Midland County is using this design too. So as with everything else we're trying to do with the rail trail, this is keeping us right in step with our local Pere Marquette Rail Trail managing partners.
Yeah, this allows us to have the same look from Midland all the way over, just the signs, everything matching up, and it gives it a smart look and it's just a much better swing gate system that we have. Any other questions? Chair, your Commissioner?
Just wondering, I know there was that gap in the trail that was awarded a grant. How's that project coming along? Is that almost ready to?
Yeah,
open?
it's looking really, really nice. So you're talking about the section in Clare? It's still scheduled to be, last I heard, it's scheduled to be completed by the end of July. And I go through there quite a bit because I live out that way. And you can see they're just making progress like crazy, and it's gonna be a really cool section of trail. And actually, so now if you were to the staging area where you could go to the Clare Moose Lodge and you could head northwest from there, you would actually be able to head back east and go kind of through the city, and it would connect up to, there's still going to be a section where you'll have to go on some kind of city blocks versus feeling like you're on a trail, but we'll be connected to that section. So that's still on track for completion this summer, as far as I'm aware. Yeah, if I get any updates or there's an event to kind of welcome the public to check that out, I'll pass that information along to the board.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move this forward to tonight's meeting.
Okay, our last item is consider approving the Mission Road Solar decommissioning agreement and bond as required by section 12.05 and N.2.1 of the Isabella County zoning ordinance and authorize the board chair to sign the same. You have Tim, Development Director, to break this down for us.
Yes,
Hi,
good
Tim.
evening again. So this staff report is for the decommissioning agreement and bond for the Mission Road Solar Project. That project is or this bond and agreement is between Isabella County and DTE Energy, or DTE Electric Company. It is approximately 150 megawatt power at interconnection. The project consists of approximately 227 acres of solar arrays, landscaping, collection lines, and access drives in sections 20 through 23, 25 through 29, 34, and 36 of Isabella Township. On May 29th of 24, several of you were there, the Planning Commission did approve with conditions the project for its special use permit and its site plans. Through that process, one of the conditions, which is required by our ordinance under section 1205 NN2L, requires the approval by the board of the decommissioning agreement and bond. In front of you, you have that decommissioning agreement and bond. You also have a letter from Chris Patterson of Fahey, Schultz, Burzich, and Rhodes, the legal team that we use for this project. This bond is very similar to the agreement and bond are very similar to the process industry for turbines, just with a different value, essentially. I did include with my staff report correspondence from Chris Patterson, which is the attorney representing us, that kind of outlined the areas of the bond. The bond agreement is about 12 pages long with 4 or 5 pages of the actual bond itself. Upon approval of the bond agreement and signature by the board, DTE has 5 days to honor that bond and get us a copy of that bond. The outline basically that was included, that I included for you, came from them. It was sort of to me just to help me outline this for you, but it includes the requirements for decommissioning. Ordinance requires it. So there's a section in here that's talking about where it comes from. The obligations. We talk about the decommissioning surety bond itself. The bond is for gotta put these on to make sure I read this big number. $14,978,500. As you can see in that document, I had asked for, we negotiated the bond number when we worked with Apex on the turbines. We wanted to know where this number came from DTE, and our attorney was able to, Chris was able to pull together recent projects that all run right in that range. And there's a table in here. We're just under $100,000 per megawatt of power. Recent decommissioning agreement in Jackson for 125, about $100,000. There's one for about 85, one for about 90. So we're at that upper end. This again is a bond that protects the community in the event that the applicant disappears on us, runs away from the project. We don't anticipate that happening, but we protect our community because that's what we're here for. So you see the numbers that are there. It discusses the decommissioning events. It discusses decommissioning bond events, when the bond is actually triggered, and the activities that go along with it. The agreement, as I indicated, was reviewed and put together. I believe Chris has worked with Emily quite heavily from DTE to come to a draft agreement that we could all agree to. And so we have the bond basically here, the bond agreement, or decommissioning agreement and bond here for signing and approval by the board. Any specific questions with regard to the document? I can best answer those.
Has that gone through legal review?
Yes, it has. This is all from our legal team. Yep.
There's no more questions. We'll end this right now and we'll bring it before our board this evening. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Director.
That concludes the work of the Human Resources and Public Works Committee. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, gentlemen. We have no intergovernmental affairs, no administrator controller issues, no unfinished business. Under new business, item A is consider accepting and placing on file the 2023 Isabella County Administrator Controller Performance Appraisal. About this. Anyone like to speak to this? I'll just point out that, so we rated the administrator on several different categories, 1 through 10. The overall average of all scores was 8.93, so I say that's pretty good. I will also say that since Administrator Frost has come on, we have developed that long-range budget planning tool, so we can look down the road as best we can several years, which was a huge improvement over what we'd been doing previously. Worked very diligently on that. And as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, worked diligently to kind of limit the financial services that we were contracting out because they're very expensive. We still can contract out some financial services. We've cut that quite a bit. We're spending a lot less on that. So I don't know if any of the other commissioners want to comment on the appraisal. Yes, sir.
In addition to the things that you talked about that we've started to incorporate into our standard operating procedure here at the county, this process, the budgeting process, I think she has been very integral in adopting this new way of coming to what our budget is going to be moving forward. Not only is it, we found that we've moved the timeline up, we've included the department heads in this process, and I think moving forward, we're going to be again, a much more solvent, a much more financially viable county, not only in the next few years, but when we get past this financial situation that we're facing, we're going to be in a good place. So again, thank you for being an integral part in that and adopting this idea moving forward. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
I'd just say, I really enjoy working with our administrator, and also I've noticed that it's very much easier to suggest changes and try different ways of doing things. And that's really been productive, I'd say. I really appreciate you.
I think our Madam Administrator is a real gem. She's brought about a change in county government where we more operate as a team. There's give and take. People have a chance to voice their opinions, and their opinions are respected. And I think it's been good for the county. I know we put her through a lot of hell. I mean, it just seems like one thing after another with asbestos and everything else that's come along. She's got to be one tough character to keep up with that, and we appreciate that.
Any other comments? Yes.
I just want to say that I am so very appreciative for this position and all of the experiences that's brought, good and otherwise. This evaluation in particular taught me something I should have known for a while as an administrator, but I didn't. Administrators score on effort. I think commissioners score on impact. So I certainly couldn't effort any more than I am, and I hope it's enough. I hope it's sufficient impact. So thank you for this opportunity.
All right, we'll move that to tonight's agenda, and item B is consider authorizing participation in the Michigan State Subdivision Agreement for allocation of Kroger Settlement Agreement, and authorize Administrator Controller Nicole F. Frost as authorized official to sign the same. And would you like to take this?
We do this one a little differently because it's a lot easier for you to change the motion to authorize me to sign than to get the attorney to change the documents, to have someone else to sign. I did sign, I think, on the previous opioid settlement too. This one is with Kroger. This is a brand new defendant, right? It's a brand new case. This one's with Kroger, payable over 11 years, 120, just over 125,000 to the county. So not as big of a settlement as some of those other ones that we have heard about. Now, you previously approved an agreement that allowed you to enter this without a resolution. So you won't see what you did from the very first opioid, but from our subsequent actions, all you need to do is approve the participation agreement. You won't sign that tonight. I'll sign electronically, and then the participation agreement will come later from the attorneys. But I know last time that we entered an additional opioid settlement, I can't remember, we had another closed session on that night. If you remember, Michael Bem, Attorney Bem, was online for hours during our meeting, and then we finally had our discussion with him, and one of the first things he said was, this doesn't have to be a closed session issue. So here we had made him wait that whole time, and so there wasn't much question. We've been through this and seen this. I didn't think it was necessary to bring him this time. If you have questions, we can bring him to a subsequent meeting, but this is more opioid settlement dollars for the county in the future.
Yes, sir.
And this is still the same agreement because we were the part of the original group, we do get a higher percentage.
Yes, I believe so. I believe so still.
Litigating local government is what we call it, so that was a good decision we made quite a while
Yes, it
ago,
was.
so.
Didn't work out so well for Ottawa County, I understand.
Okay, any questions on that item? Hearing nothing further, we'll move that to tonight's agenda, and that'll bring us to general public comments. Is there anyone for general public comment?
It says on here something to me. Am I good? Thank you. Hello and good evening. My name is Bree Mogenberg. I am right here from Union Township in Isabella County. I want to first thank all of you here. As some of you may not know, I was able to work with Tobin, and I was able to get some information and some questions that a lot of voters have been asking. So if you're not aware, a lot of voters are very concerned about the current millage that's coming up. We're maxed out. Folks, we are maxed out. I'm not sure if you're all aware of where inflation is right now, but it's hard. You know, I just did a grocery search, and I do daycare, so I have tons and tons of grocery bills that all go way back in my Walmart order. And I had a bill that was $149. It was up to $275 from 2 years ago if I was to purchase the same thing. So while I appreciate all of the information that we have, I do want to say, guys, we are maxed out. We don't want any more bonds, okay? So all of this talk about any bonds, I don't care what the bond is, stop. Like, at this point, and you guys can snicker and laugh and do whatever you want to do, that's okay, but I'm telling you what the voter thinks. You, at this point, have lost trust from this community, and I'm going to tell you one of the reasons that you have lost trust. Hi, Nicole, can you hear what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, I'm actually writing down what you're saying.
Thank you. Because I do hope that you are. One of the reasons that you have lost trust in this community is because you have not been transparent. So while potentially you're not doing anything nefariously, or you're not trying to conceal anything, the moment that you are not straightforward and transparent with the voter, the one who is paying for everything to happen, you just lost our trust. So with this information that I just received, I am going to recommend everything that has to do with this millage, including the asbestos, the reports, the numbers, how the state's not stepping in, how that actually takes place. I think that is 1000% pertinent to post directly on the page where we can go directly to the county commission page and click on it. You guys, that's all the information that if everything is transparent and we have it and you're doing things appropriately, let the voter know, because all of these questions has the voter putting their foot in the door saying, we don't want any more. But the bonds have to stop. The millages, everything has to stop until you're able to reestablish that trust with the voter. Now, one thought that I've had is the audits. Have you all studied the audits? And one question that I have, and I know you can't answer this right now, have you looked at audits from when the past and the former administrator was in this position? I ask you now, are we in any position to be potentially litigated against for anything, whether it's finances or anything that potentially could come from an audit under the former administrator? So if we are, I think that's something that we also need to know. And I think that showing the public again and putting those audits forward would really help build that transparency. So I leave you with transparency, be an imperative to build trust with the voters. If you are not able to make that happen, you're not going to get the support of the voter. Thank you very much. And
Thank
thank you
you.
again for all the information.
Yep, absolutely. Anyone else for general public comment?
Hello, my name is Linda Richardson. Yesterday, Mr. Emery came to the Broomfield Township meeting and he stated he is he knows the most about the finances in this group, and that he himself is what developed and had all the people in the departments do a line item, and he got the budget down like 4 million and some dollars. If you guys make everybody, all the departments under you do a line item budget, why can't we get a line item budget from you? You work for us. Why are we not able to see what your budget is and what you're spending? We've asked for audits, we're not getting them. Why can't we see what the budget is? We go in there and you put X amount of money for this. No, we want to see exactly line for line what is being spent on what. You spent 80 to 100,000, I'm assuming, on, we're hearing, on Herrick Park? Really? For a playground? We're also hearing that at Deerfield Park, it's a hit and miss whether you have to pay or not to get in. Really? It's not a hit and miss if you charge us on taxes to pay for the parks. Why isn't there somebody there taking money for these parks? If you have enough money for $80,000, you can lower that amount of millage for parks and recreation. You're charging way too much for us taxpayers. This is ridiculous. How much did it cost us to put that playground in? You can lower these millages. It's unfair, especially for playgrounds, and you're not even charging these people to use them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for general public comment? Okay, seeing no one else, announcements. Yes, sir.
Just saying that playground was a grant, $300,000. It didn't cost you anything. Just saying. That's how so many things are misinformed in this county. It was zero.
Thank you. I have one, and over the last couple of days, I've had a few different people ask me what happens if this millage renewal fails. So here's the process. Here's what takes place. If it does fail, Then it falls on what's called the Tax Allocation Board to set the millage rates, which are currently 6.61 for the county operating, 1 mil for the townships, and 0.28 for the Gratiot Isabella RESD, making 7.89 in total. So the Tax Allocation Board is made up of the county treasurer, the chair of the finance committee, the Isabella Gratiot RESD superintendent, someone elected by the township supervisors, a representative of any municipality of 10,000 or more people, which would be the city of Mount Pleasant, and a person not affiliated with any government entity, which we have appointed that person back in April. So this would be a yearly process where the tax allocation board would look at how much they're going to allocate. They could levy the same amount. They could levy less, but statutorily, they would have to levy at least 3 mills for the county. And their levy, because it would not be a voter approved one, would be subject to any Headley rollback of assessment value increased enough to trigger a rollback. So that's, I didn't understand that fully until recently, but that's the process. If this voter millage is turned down, the parks and I-ride millages, if they fail, then they would have to function entirely on fees and grants. So other than that, I just want to encourage everyone to vote August 6th. You can vote at your precinct from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Or we also now have 9 days of early voting. If you're in the city or Union Township, you can vote at Powers Hall on CMU campus from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Powers Hall is on Washington Avenue, north of Preston, but south of Bellows. So parking lot 6 on the north side of the building. If you can find Washington south of Bellows, there'll be signs all over. It'll be real easy to find, and free parking there in front of Powers Hall. The other townships all can vote here at the Commission on Aging, 2200 South Lincoln Road, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Those same dates, July 27th to August 4th. It's important, I think, to keep in mind, these are renewals of existing tax rates, not new or increased taxes. The other thing we're working on, I had a question about the asbestos. And I've been asked before, if the air quality levels were safe, why did we go to such extreme? And if I can try to boil that down and explain it briefly, the material was so if you can imagine, above the ceiling here is a concrete deck. It was all sprayed with this asbestos fireproofing in 1972. Over the years, that has dried out and fallen, so it's laying on top of those ceiling tiles. So the only areas that had high levels of asbestos in the air were the mechanical rooms that didn't have any drop ceiling, where it just fell on the floor. The air quality was good in the rest of it because it's laying on those ceiling tiles. But that means you can never change a ceiling tile, or if you drop the cover down to change one of those light bulbs, you disturb it. If you get up in that vent to clean that out, you disturb it. If you run cabling, which we do all the time, you disturb it. So anything like that creates an abatement issue. It was also down in all of the wall cavities. So all the drywall had to be removed. Actually, the interior walls had to be removed. We're working on a synopsis of that we can put on the website. People can go to and see the whole story, start to finish, what we spent so far. what we expect. We don't know exactly what it'll cost to put everything back together, but we have a rough idea. We're real close to getting that out and getting that on the website, so people will be able to go and see not only the testing report, but the whole story of how this all started and how we got to where we are. So look for that soon. And that's all I have. Any other announcements? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved and supported, are adjourned at 7:19. Back.